Look at the small creature sleeping on your sofa. It weighs less than 10 pounds, spends 70% of its day unconscious, and produces absolutely nothing of economic value to your household. Yet before its medical bills, buy its premium food, clean its waste, and actively reshape your living space around its comfort. For centuries, humanity has operated under a comforting illusion. We proud apex predators looked at the natural world and saw resources to tame, wild landscapes to bend, and animals to conquer. We selectively bred wolves into obedient soldiers, transformed wild horses into engines of transport, and forced heavy cattle into our service. Every creature that crossed our threshold did so because we willed it, except one. 10,000 years ago, a tiny desert predator looked at the rising towers of human civilization, evaluated our systems, and decided to move in entirely on its own terms. No cages, no training, no genetic overhaul. You probably believe your ancestors domesticated the cat, but the deeper truth of evolutionary biology suggests something far more unsettling. The cat did not get domesticated. It domesticated us. And the wildest part of this biological coup d'etat is that it is still happening right now. The grain paradox, the archaeology of an invitation. To understand how this asymmetrical relationship began, we must first examine the moment humanity made its most profound civilizational pivot. Around 10 millennia ago, in the geographic arc known as the Fertile Crescent, human beings abandoned the nomadic lifestyle. For hundreds of thousands of years, our species survived by moving across massive landscapes, hunting wild game, and gathering seasonal plants. We owned only what we could carry. Our ecological footprint was fleeting. But then came agriculture. Humans learned to domesticate wheat, barley, and grain. This shift transformed our relationship with geography and time. Instead of moving, we stayed put. We built permanent timber and stone structures. We cleared forests, mapped out fields, and for the very first time in human history, we began accumulating a massive surplus of resources. We created the concept of storage. This agricultural revolution seemed like an absolute triumph of human intellect. We had beaten the seasonal cycle of starvation. We had secured our future. But in biology, every concentrated resource creates an ecological vacuum. By building giant, static mountains of grain, humans unknowingly created an artificial ecosystem, a beacon of infinite energy screaming into the wilderness. The first to respond to this beacon were the rodents. House mice and black rats, which had previously lived marginal lives in the wild, discovered that human granaries were paradise on Earth. They moved into the floors, multiplied inside the walls, and infested the thatched roofs of early agricultural villages. This was not a minor inconvenience. A severe rodent infestation was an existential threat. A single colony of rats could systematically consume an entire village's winter food reserves, sentencing an entire community to winter starvation. Furthermore, they brought pathogens, silent killers that thrived in the dense new human settlements. Humanity had built its new civilized world on a foundation that tiny pests were quietly eating through from the inside out. We were highly intelligent apex predators, yet we were completely defenseless against an army of mice. We lacked the speed, the night vision, and the physical architecture to hunt them effectively. We were desperate for an intervention, and from the shadows of the surrounding scrublands, a small, solitary hunter was watching. This was Felis libica, the African wildcat. It was a fiercely independent, territorial carnivore adapted to the harsh conditions of the Near Eastern deserts. Unlike wolves, which hunted in cooperative packs and possessed a social hierarchy that humans could easily exploit, the African wildcat lived a life of complete isolation. It did not want to belong to a pack. It did not want to obey a leader. However, the wildcats noticed the anomalous concentration of rodents around human villages. The boldest individuals among them began to test the perimeter of human territory. They crept closer to the flickering fires and the strange, loud, upright apes. They discovered that if they tolerated the presence of humans, they gained access to an infinite, self-replenishing supply of fat, easy prey. Zooarchaeologists studying ancient remains in places like Cyprus and China have uncovered a remarkable detail about this phase of history. The bones of these early cats show no signs of human-inflicted trauma, confinement, or rapid selective breeding. In every other case of animal domestication, humans drove the process deliberately. We captured wild wolves, culled the aggressive ones, and bred the compliant ones for specific tasks. We did the same with sheep, pigs, and horses. We fundamentally altered their morphology and psychological profiles to suit our needs. But cats simply showed up. They chose to tolerate us because our civilizational garbage and storage systems served their survival. Researchers call this the commensal pathway to domestication. The cats that were slightly calmer, the ones less easily spooked by human noise, successfully hunted the mice and passed their calm traits to their offspring. The fearful, aggressive cats stayed in the desert, competing for scarce resources. Generation after generation, cats lived alongside humans for thousands of years without human interference. They did not change to fit our world. They merely expanded their territory into ours. They remained wild animals that found a highly comfortable arrangement inside human civilization, the maritime expansion, trading security for global dominance. Once the partnership was established, humans did something that transformed a local ecological alliance into a global phenomenon. We began moving cats across the planet. As agriculture spread from the Middle East into southeastern Europe and the Mediterranean, human farmers brought their feline protectors along. But the true acceleration of this partnership happened on the water. When ancient civilizations developed maritime trade, they faced the exact same problem as the early farmers, but amplified to a catastrophic degree. Wooden ships carrying precious cargoes of grain, textiles, and spices across the Mediterranean were floating paradises for rats. If rats infested a ship's hold during a multi-month voyage, they could ruin thousands of dollars of cargo, chew through critical ropes, and spread deadly plagues among the crew. Sailors quickly realized that a single cat on board was more valuable than an extra crew member. Cats required no wages, very little water, and maintained themselves by hunting the very pests that threatened the ship. These ship cats became highly prized assets. Phoenician, Egyptian, and Roman vessels carried cats to every major port in the known world. Consider the profound irony of this historical moment. A small desert predator that had evolved to hunt in the arid scrublands of Africa was now crossing vast oceans, sheltered inside massive wooden vessels constructed by the most advanced technology of the time. The cats did not plan this expansion. They did not navigate the stars or row the oars. They simply followed the food. Yet, by being useful, they tricked the most dominant species on Earth into acting as their personal chauffeur, transporting their species to every single continent except Antarctica. As cats arrived in new lands, their status began to shift from practical tools to sacred companions. Nowhere is this transformation more vivid than in ancient Egypt. The Egyptians did not just tolerate cats, they elevated them to the realm of the divine. They observed the cat's fierce protectiveness over the home, its clean habits, and its untamable independence, and they saw the traits of gods. By the time of the New Kingdom, around 3,500 years ago, Egyptian art was filled with depictions of cats sitting beneath the chairs of wealthy families, wearing gold earrings and eating fish from silver platters. The goddess Bastet, depicted as a woman with the head of a cat, became one of the most popular deities in the Egyptian pantheon, representing protection, fertility, and domestic joy. The ancient historian Herodotus recorded that when a house cat died of natural causes in an Egyptian home, the inhabitants would shave their eyebrows as a sign of deep mourning. If a person killed a cat, even by accident, the punishment was often swift execution by an angry mob. When Egyptian warriors went to battle, their enemies sometimes painted cats on their shields or carried live cats into the front lines, knowing the Egyptians would rather surrender than risk harming a sacred feline. When these beloved animals passed away, they were mummified with the same expensive oils, linens, and care reserved for human royalty, buried in massive dedicated cemeteries so they could enjoy the afterlife. The cat had pulled off the ultimate evolutionary trick. A street-dwelling exterminator had managed to convince an empire to worship it as a living deity, and the cats characteristically accepted this adoration without a single sign of surprise or gratitude. The acoustic hijack. How to audio engineer a human. As the centuries progressed and the physical threat of starvation from rodents faded with modern technology, cats faced an evolutionary challenge. They no longer needed to earn their keep purely through pest control. To survive in the modern world of apartments and industrialized food, they needed a new strategy. They needed to move from our barns into our bedrooms. To do that, they developed a sophisticated set of psychological and biological tools designed to directly hack the human nervous system. Let us begin with the acoustic engineering of the meow. If you observe feral cats living in wild colonies, you will notice something fascinating. Adult cats almost never meow at each other. Their communication consists of scent marking, body language, hisses, and low growls. To a cat, an adult meow is useless, yet domestic house cats meow incessantly at humans. Why? Because domestic cats developed this vocalization specifically as a custom communication system directed entirely at us. Over thousands of years of living near humans, cats learned that humans are primarily acoustic creatures who respond dramatically to vocal cues. Acoustic scientists have run experiments comparing the vocalizations of the wild African cat with the domestic house cat. The results are startling. The wild cat's call is harsh, grating, and demanding. It sounds like an aggressive warning. The domestic cat's meow, however, has been shaped during its cohabitation with humans to be significantly shorter, higher-pitched, and far more pleasing to our auditory system. Why do humans find these high-pitched sounds so agreeable? Because human biology is hardwired to respond to the high-pitched vocalizations of our own offspring. A human baby's cry or babble falls within a specific acoustic frequency that immediately triggers alertness, empathy, and a desire to comfort in the adult human brain. Domestic cats evolved their vocalizations to mimic this exact acoustic sweet spot. Your cat is not speaking to you in its natural language. It has engineered a customized audio signal that exploits your deepest evolutionary vulnerability, your parental instinct. But their acoustic manipulation goes even deeper than the meow. Consider the purr. For a long time, humans assumed that a cat's purr was simply a sign of passive contentment. Modern bioacoustics tells a much more complex story. Cats purr in a consistent frequency range of 20 to 140 Hz. In human medicine, vibrations within this exact frequency range are used in physical therapy to stimulate bone growth, repair fractured tissues, reduce inflammation, ease muscle strain, and lower blood pressure. When a cat climbs onto your chest and begins to purr, it is not just resting. It is generating a localized, low-frequency vibrational field that interacts with your body on a physiological level. Your heart rate slows down, your cortisol levels drop, your brain begins to associate the physical presence of the cat with a profound sense of physical safety and healing. The cat has essentially turned itself into a living, breathing pharmaceutical intervention. And when they want something specific, like food in the early hours of the morning, they deploy their ultimate weapon, the solicitation purr. Behavioral biologists digitally analyzed the sound signatures of these insistent purrs and discovered that cats consciously embed a high-frequency cry within the low-frequency purr. This embedded sound signature directly overlaps with the exact frequency of a human infant's cry. When that sound hits your ears at 5 o'clock in the morning, it triggers an immediate spike of anxiety in your brain. It is neurologically impossible for most humans to ignore it. You cannot simply block it out, because your subconscious brain interprets that sound as a human baby in distress. You get out of bed, walk to the kitchen, and open a can of cat food, driven by a deep biological compulsion. The cat sits quietly by its bowl, watching you work, having successfully deployed a targeted acoustic hack to control your behavior. Intermittent dopamine, the biochemistry of addiction. The manipulation does not stop with sound. Cats have also mastered the complex neurochemistry of human attachment. Every time we interact with another living being, our brains process the interaction through neurotransmitters like dopamine, which drives anticipation and reward, and oxytocin, the hormone responsible for social bonding, trust, and love. Most domesticated animals, like dogs, offer a consistent, predictable emotional return on investment. If you walk into a room, a dog will almost always wag its tail, show unbridled joy, and offer immediate affection. This creates a stable, linear emotional bond. Cats operate on an entirely different behavioral matrix. Their affection is rare, volatile, and highly unpredictable. A cat may greet you warmly at the door one afternoon and then completely ignore your existence for the next 3 days. It might walk past you as if you are a piece of inanimate furniture, refusing your touch and looking through you with cold, unblinking eyes. And then, unexpectedly, on the 4th night, it will jump onto your lap, curl into a ball, and look up at you with soft eyes. To the human brain, this unpredictability is not frustrating, it is intoxicating. In behavioral psychology, this is known as a variable reward schedule. B.F. Skinner, the famous behavioral psychologist, discovered through experiments with animals that if you reward a behavior predictably every single time, the subject eventually takes the reward for granted and loses interest. But if you provide the reward randomly and unpredictably, the subject becomes obsessed. This is the exact neurobiological mechanism behind gambling and slot machines. The uncertainty of the payout creates a massive spike of dopamine in the brain during the anticipation phase. When the reward finally arrives after a period of deprivation, the brain experiences a massive rush of pleasure far greater than it would from a predictable reward. Cats are master behavioral psychologists. By rationing their affection and making it unpredictable, they elevate the value of their attention. When your cat finally chooses to sit with you after days of indifference, your brain does not experience mild satisfaction. It experiences a massive surge of dopamine and oxytocin. You feel chosen, you feel validated, you feel a deep chemical rush of attachment. Humans have spent centuries engineering complex algorithms and casino games to induce this state of psychological dependency in each other. Cats figured out how to do it to humans thousands of years ago, using nothing but their own aloofness. They do not earn our affection through constant service or obedience. They engineer our addiction through calculated indifference, the paradoxical victory, an unchanged predator in a synthetic world. Let us step back and look at the grand evolutionary ledger. What does a species usually have to sacrifice to achieve global success alongside humans? Look at the dog. To survive with us, the wolf had to give up its wild nature, its physical shape, and its independence. It shrank its brain, altered its jaw structure, and became so attuned to human body language that it looks to us for permission before it eats. Look at the cow, the sheep, or the chicken. They sacrificed their freedom, their intelligence, and their dignity, turning into mass-produced biological commodities confined to industrial cages. Now look at the cat. Today, there are an estimated 600 million domestic cats on Earth. They have achieved global ecological dominance. They have conquered every major city, suburb, and rural community. And what did they sacrifice to achieve this? Nothing. Genetic sequencing reveals that the DNA of a modern house cat sleeping on a velvet cushion is nearly identical to the DNA of the wild African cat hunting in the deserts 10,000 years ago. Their physical anatomy remains perfectly optimized for apex predation. They possess retractable claws, incredible night vision, hyperflexible spines, and a digest system that remains strictly carnivorous. If you take a domestic dog and cast it out into the wilderness, its chances of survival are incredibly low. It has lost the instincts and physical tools to survive without human intervention. But if you take a domestic cat and place it in the wild, it reverts to a fully functional, highly efficient wild predator within a single generation. Feral cat colonies around the world survive completely independent of human care, decimating local wildlife populations with terrifying efficiency. Domestication for the cat is not a biological transformation. It is a temporary lifestyle choice. It is a highly lucrative business contract that they can tear up at any moment. They have managed to secure all the benefits of human civilization: climate-controlled housing, high-quality nutrition, top-tier medical care, and protection from larger predators, without surrendering a single ounce of their wild autonomy. They have forced the most destructive, dominant species in planetary history to build a multi-billion-dollar global industry of toys, gourmet food, and automated litter boxes, all dedicated to serving their comfort. We did not conquer them. We did not tame them. We built a spectacular world, and they simply looked at it, noticed it was a much better arrangement than the harsh realities of the desert, and made themselves at home. Tonight, a descendant of those ancient desert hunters will walk across your room. It might sit just slightly out of your reach, ignoring your call. It might look at you with cold, analytical eyes, or it might suddenly decide to grace you with its presence, triggering that familiar, warm rush of oxytocin in your brain. When that happens, take a moment to appreciate the sheer brilliance of the creature before you. The story of the cat teaches us a powerful lesson about human psychology and the nature of influence. Real power does not always come from force, aggression, or demanding control. True, lasting influence lies in understanding the hidden needs, vulnerabilities, and psychological triggers of those around you, and positioning yourself so perfectly that they gladly serve your interests while believing it was their own choice. The next time you open a can of expensive food for your cat, ask yourself, who is really in charge here? If you want to understand more about the hidden biological systems and psychological traps that govern our modern world, make sure to explore our other deep dives. But for now, look down at your master, and let us know in the comments below. How exactly does your cat manipulate you? Do you get hit with the infant cry purr, or are you a victim of the variable reward dopamine chase? Drop your stories below and let us see who owns the most strategic cat.